Hi guys, this is Ryan from Blockchain Markets, the channel where I do independent cryptocurrency research and blockchain projects. And then today I have a special guest. I'm with Pavel Bains from Bluzelle. So welcome, Pavel, to the channel. Very glad to have you here.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for spending time to do this together.
No, thank you, as I said, for taking the time. And for all the viewers, I'll tell you a bit of how everything started with Bluzelle. I did, as you know, guys, research on Bluzelle a while ago, and then I put it on the channel, but also on the website, my analysis. And I was basically looking at all this blockchain or the infrastructure projects for this stage of blockchain, and that's how I came across to with Bluzelle, because I thought, well, all these new dApps are gonna need now just using centralized databases. So is there something that is decentralized for them? That's how I came across. Also for you to know, Pavel, how I discovered Bluzelle. So I thought it would be good to go through the project with you, and first to know a little bit about you. So if you can tell us a bit about your background, and then we just jump more. We can jump more on Bluzelle itself.
Yeah. So traditionally, my background is went to school for finance, international business, marketing. I really came from the digital media world. So traditionally, was doing running video game companies. So worked for Disney, did projects for Microsoft, on the Xbox, Electronic Arts, Activision, some of the bigger publishers out there. And then after we did that, then I moved into more into digital media. The iPad broke out around 2010. We started working on a kids book publishing platform on the iPad called Story Panda, and it was basically to allow new authors the ability to have their own book apps to come out to market. As that was kind of, after that, stumbled onto Bitcoin, blockchain, what's this all about? And just like yourself and others, you just go, it's a rabbit hole, right?
Yeah. Cool. So, and then how did you decide to, well, you mentioned that you started in getting interested in cryptocurrencies and blockchain projects. From that very first encounter, like how did that end up in Bluzelle? What was the use case that you saw that here's an opportunity, or this something that is the market is lacking?
Well, I was reading a bunch of stuff on it and seeing which platforms at that time, was really interested in how Ripple was working. And, I met my co-founder. We decided, let's just start doing, we wanted to build a tech company around the blockchain. So, okay, what can we start doing right away? We saw that the benefits Ripple could provide when they were doing their old system of creating gateways around the world, and saying, hey, let's have these, basically decentralized gateways. Let's allow money to move freely from everybody, their original model before they went really to the banking side. And so we started working on some Ripple-based products. From there, stuff wasn't really taking off as fast. And then, we found that the bigger blockchain companies, or our thesis was that, hey, the enterprises, that's, around 2015, 2016, people were saying, hey, blockchain enterprise. Crypto is not it. It's, the banks and insurance companies, or mainly the banks, can use blockchain. So we moved to Asia, to Singapore, to target all the financial markets here, financial companies here, to really sell them in blockchain technologies and build their businesses. So through 2016, part of 2017, we did that for a bunch of insurance companies in Asia, AIA, MSIG. And then we also did projects for some of the banks like HSBC, OCBC, MUFGs. So a mix of Asian banks from Singapore, Japan, and Hong Kong. And then it was while doing those projects, we discovered that the need for a decentralized database was needed. And really, it was really, so starting from like a traditional tech company, we're always trying to figure out what's that product that's going to scale, that we can go where there's no gatekeepers, we can create a network effect, and really just stumbled onto it while we're doing these projects.
Interesting. And so you were at the same time in parallel doing those projects, and I guess like starting with Bluzelle, right?
Well, the company was always Bluzelle. It was just to be a blockchain tech company. And then And then after we kind of stumbled that, hey, the decentralized database is where it's going to go. We didn't want to rebrand and say something else. We're like, we built good brand equity up in Asia for it. We love the name. So we said, no, we're just going to evolve the technology we did before to basically just be a decentralized database.
Cool. So actually, speaking of which, now that we're talking about Bluzelle, can you give us a brief summary of what Bluzelle is?
So at its core, it's a decentralized database. So by that, what we mean is instead of storing your data on centralized clouds and go there, what we're saying is let's just go take all the extra storage capacity out there around the world on our computers, eventually on our mobile phones, on our PlayStations, and turn them into nodes where we can store people's data or customer data, company data, the database, and basically store it there. And then Bluzelle will be the database that connects it all. And consumers, users of the network would pay in a Bluzelle token. And then producers on the network who provide the storage, they can earn the token.
Interesting. So it's like basically like an Airbnb of databases.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's a database, but really it's a marketplace, right? That's going to bring everybody together.
Exactly. No, really interesting, and it ties up very well with what decentralization is all about. And as I was saying at the beginning, that's something from a perspective of a user, and I thought talking to other developers that were looking to develop dApps, there was something that they were asking, and the community they were saying that they would have to just use something like they would have to store the data in Azure or Rackspace or AWS, and so for them it's a real solution.
Well, the funny part is, so we started working on this around May 2017.
Mm-hmm.
But 6 months earlier, my CTO had actually brought it up to me. And he said, hey, it'd be a really good use of the blockchain. And he goes, it won't be a blockchain per se, but the principles. I was like, what? And he said, a decentralized database. And he went over the merits of it and we talked about it. But at that time, we were so busy, trying to convince enterprises to do blockchain technology. We had some projects going. We said, we're having a tough time selling this. Who's going to buy a decentralized database? Like, is there a market for it yet? So we kind of just put it on the side. And then around, like I said, when we were finishing up these projects for these banks and insurance, we're like, wait, we built a decentralized application. We had to store it, like you said, on Microsoft Azure. We had to blockchainify, we had to do a lot of configuration. We saw that pain. And he said, what would have made that job easier? And I said, what? He goes, that decentralized database idea I had. So the nice thing was that the best problems or products are the ones that come out when you discover the problem for yourself. You got to solve it yourself. So that's when we said, yeah, we were scoping it out. Now is the right time because we just came across that. Everyone's going to have this problem, so let's start working on it.
Cool. Yeah, really interesting because it starts as a problem that you actually had. You know what the pain is. Speaking of which, so that time you mentioned that you were working mainly doing these projects for bigger size companies. And at the moment, if I understand well, for what I wrote in your white paper and on your website, you're focusing more on mid-size and dApp developers mainly at this stage. What was the strategy behind moving from those big potential customers to starting with this niche of dApp developer?
So working on the enterprise side, especially with blockchain, what we learned was, like I said, I came from video games. So enterprise sales was new to us. And then what we realized we didn't realize that no matter how much logic you can give to this and the product and the strength, sales cycles are just way too long. And so for me, I was like, I would rather charge no money and have people use my product than it just sit on a shelf and wait for the next VP or president to okay it. And then also coming back to video games, any technology that's ever broken through is always developers, small developers, early stage risk takers who broke ground. Example is in video games, like I said, I come from is, I don't know if you've heard of Unity.
Yeah.
So Unity, basically, once smartphones took off, Unity allowed everybody to build a mobile game pretty quickly and took a lot of the grunt work out of it. the target market then was that, hey, a shop that's 2 to 4 people can build a mobile game pretty quickly and and getting rid of a lot of the content development, it was an engine that made it easier. Traction picked up there. Then eventually companies like EA, Activision, they all started using Unity after they saw all the pickup from all the developers, and showed that this, even though it started small, it could scale up to the big ones too. You know, you look at companies like Cloudflare, Heroku, always, it was the early, smaller developers, small companies who used these things, proved it out, and then the bigger ones took it over. Slack is another good example. So we said, look at the history of that. And because we come from games and we like talking to developers and smaller companies and get together with them, hackathons, events, we say that's the target market. Let's just aim strictly at those guys.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense. I think that to go for the early adopters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, moving forward, if you can explain a bit of how Bluzelle works. I want you to go through the concept of swarming, which is something really interesting that I think sets you guys apart. So if you can explain us how this decentralized database works compared to more to the previous phase, which was more cloud-based databases, and the previous one, which was more on-premise.
The biggest difference is when you decentralize, you take away a lot of the points of failure and points of attack. So when you're centralized, as we've seen all these data breaches happen in the past year, in a centralized system, somebody can just get into one server or one cluster of servers, and if they're all running on the same encryption, they can break in and just basically steal the data, change it, do everything they want. That's why you've seen all these events happen. Now, when you decentralize it, and like I said, the key aspects of ours is the sharding and swarming. And swarming is more for about the speed access. Sharding is more important where, let's say we have 1,000 nodes on a network. You've got your database list of all the people who subscribe to, your YouTube channel, your email marketing, everything. What we do is take that data set, and by sharding it, basically we're breaking it up into pieces and scattering them all to all the different nodes. So that way, even if somebody broke into one of the nodes, all they got was one piece of data, but didn't get the entire database. To take over the entire database, they have to take over the entire decentralized network. So that's the security aspect. The swarming, reason we're doing that is for speed. So whether we're decentralized or centralized, if a developer or a database engineer can't get access to the data quickly, that's going to be a problem. Yeah. It doesn't matter centralized, decentralized. So instead of where Bitcoin, Ethereum, everything kind of goes on a universal state consensus, and that's why you have the slowdown. By swarming, what you're saying is there's a universe, but let's move them into galaxies. So as long as we can get consensus at the small galaxy level, we can keep the speed instant, which is what a database developer wants to have.
Yeah. So by having the consensus on a swarming level and not in the whole Bluzelle universe level, then you have a much better performance.
That's right.
Got it. Now the other things that we also talk about swarming and sharding. If you can go a little bit more deeper on sharding, or explain it on how that would be. How would you use sharding and for what purpose?
Like I said, to elaborate on there, it's really, the big part is one, speed. So you can get the data in multiple places and have it redundant. Big one is the security, like I said, is picture it like, let's take your entire database, print it on a plate, and we replicate that plate a bunch of times, but then we smash that plate into all those plates into thousands of pieces. Now you're just taking bits of that and scattering it across all the nodes. So once again, it's basically, if a node goes down, that's okay. We know there's a backup of that data record, that little piece somewhere else. If somebody breaks into, somehow breaks encryption, gets into one of the nodes, all they got was, let's just say the record was Pavel Bains, Singapore, works for Bluzelle. All they might have got was a name Pavel. That's meaningless to a person unless they get the entire data record, because if it's Pavel, what's what can anybody do with that?
We need to find everything in all the other nodes.
Correct.
Exactly. So, so to explain that part to somebody that haven't heard about sharding or swarming before, swarming would be for a better way to actually tackle the problem of speed.
Yeah, performance.
Of performance, and sharding would be to tackle the problem of security.
That's right. That's probably the easiest way to understand.
Perfect. One question that I saw, and I thought it was an interesting question, and I saw it on Reddit, is that what happens in a swarm when one of the nodes shuts down or is not working anymore, or something happens to one of the nodes?
Oh yeah, so that's the exciting part, like I said, is even if one of the nodes, because we shard it and replicate it, it doesn't matter. The entire data set stays alive. So when we were doing our, like if you go onto our YouTube past webinars, we demo a simulation of that, where we've got a swarm running, and it's showing the nodes coming on and offline. And at the same time, it's got a data record showing that, hey, things are getting written to, moved, but it never breaks. So we simulate showing, hey, here a bunch of nodes came alive, some died off, some stayed persistent, but on the screen when you see the data record, it stays persistent and things are being create, read, update, delete constantly. So because of that, sharding and replication, that's how you keep the system alive. Interesting.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the description to that video as well, so then the viewers can see that part in more detail. Now you mentioned also that well, anybody can use or give the space in the CPU to become a node in a swarm. How is that? And at this stage, are you guys planning to start in this first phase with a pool of selected people that could run nodes for a swarm, or do you want to just roll it out to the entire community from the very beginning?
No, we won't be able to do the community from the beginning, because the whole thing of payment in an efficient way, that still needs to be figured out by a lot of companies. So initially, we're going to allow people to use it, and we've got some partner companies, like we'll probably run some of the nodes, and we've got some strategic partners that we'll announce over the next couple of months, who will basically say, hey, we'll do it, and and most likely it'll be for a very low cost or almost free, just to show that the system works for the next couple of months. So the goal is the release that comes out end of June, early July, that will allow dApps to download, start storing data in a test environment, alpha environment, on a single swarm, and we will have a bunch of nodes out there running.
Perfect. And for that phase, for that release in June, that will be for people that are developing dApps on Ethereum and Neo as well, or are you concentrating more in one of them?
Doing obviously out the gate Ethereum, but right now, over the next month, we're working on the Neo integration as well.
Cool. So by June, we expect both?
Yeah, that's the target, yeah.
Cool. No, that's really interesting. Now, the other things you mentioned, that the token, the utility of the token, if you can talk about a bit more about that. How's the utility of the token? I understand that there are 2 tokens in the system.
Yeah, so everybody always asks why 2 tokens, and once again, it comes down to performance. We'd love to have 1 token, but if you look at an ERC20 token, which is the BLZ, it's less friction. It's easier to raise. People understand how to raise money. There's wallets already built for it, so it's really a funding mechanism. But if you use the BLZ ERC20 token, that Ryan, let's say you want to update your database, and you had to wait for the confirmation from the Ethereum network, that can take minutes. And you're like, if you're a developer, you can't wait minutes for your data. So what we realized, that to compensate for that, we'll have an internal token that we just call BNT, Bluzelle native token for now. So now let's just say, Ryan, you're the user, you come up, you've got, I don't know, $100 worth of BLZ. You're like, hey, I'm ready to use a service. Cool. At Bluzelle.com, we'll basically take your $100 worth of BLZ, give you $100 worth of BNT. Now you can use the network, do all your database stuff. Eventually, if you're like, hey, I want to go take that, cash it out, that's fine. We'll just convert that BNT back into those BLZ that you had, and you can, go to the exchanges, sell it, do what you want.
Perfect. Yeah, makes sense. Now, if we move more to the roadmap, you mentioned now that you have some exciting news in June. If you can tell us where are you now in the development and the whole roadmap, and then where do you see Bluzelle in the coming quarters of this year?
Yeah, so for right now, like I said, the main thing the team's been pushing for is that June release of what we call this release, Lovelace, and it will be single swarm connected to Neo, Ethereum, and dApps will be able to start doing some create, rate, update, delete on it in a test environment. By April 27th, we're doing a hackathon in Vancouver. A lot of the products should be ready there. Our plan is to put it out there for these hackers, the people participating in the hackathon, and they can start building some projects or products around it over that weekend. That will give us some more ideas that, hey, where people can go with it. We can showcase that, and then really firming that up for that end of June release. So then all these companies we're working with right now, like, Zilliqa, Physical, 0x, Sentinel, they can start really using it by the end of June. And then at the same time, we're starting to onboard, acquire our customers, like not just these companies that we're working directly with for use cases, but everybody kind of educate themselves on the product, sign up for early access. So by the end of June, they can say, oh, great, I've got this, I'm going to download it. I know enough about it now. I want to start using this thing. So really, that's really our goal right now, is to focus on that. Then after that, it's the rest of the summer is get that feedback, iterate, and start moving towards from single swarm to multi-swarm.
Interesting. Now, one thing that I thought it was very interesting as well, something that you mentioned, I believe, in another interview, is that your long-term vision is not just be the decentralized database for decentralized apps, but you also think that the centralized world needs also a decentralized database. Why do you think is that? And then what do you think of, is that part of your 5 years vision, or after all that we just discussed?
I mean, from the beginning, the goal, we always knew that a decentralized database benefits everybody. Forget about the blockchain world. Everybody should be using it. I mean, I said, look at the data breaches that happened last year with Equifax had 150 million records stolen. Yeah. MyFitnessPal just a couple of weeks ago had 15 million records stolen. Well, only 15 million, but it's still 15 million records. Yeah. It's just funny how the magnitude changes people's thought perception. So we believe every product should be using a decentralized database. Everyone should be running, computer processing through a decentralized way. Everyone should be doing file storage. Everything. We're building a decentralized internet, and we know the benefits of it. We just know that the target market, people who understand it, are the dApps right now. They need it. They understand blockchain technology. So those to us was always just, what's that early adopter? So it was just dApps. From there, once we, over the next 2 years, show that, hey, this works for this world, it's been traction, then we can go to anybody who's, let's say, building a mobile app or web application, whether it's a calendar app, a mobile game, they need databases, and they should come to the understanding that, whoa, maybe we shouldn't be using these centralized databases, we should use this system, Bluzelle. Yeah,
exactly. And probably those later on, those bigger companies will be using Oracle, or are using Oracle already, and then by then they'll just look around for a decentralized.
That's right.
Yeah. So another thing in terms of team how's your team? I understand that you guys are located in different countries. Part of the team, if I understand, is in Canada, and part of the team in Singapore. And how does the team look like?
Yeah, so we're about 15 now. Singapore is main business headquarters, marketing, business development, more in the Asia region. That's where Vancouver, we're originally from. Our tech team is there because, one, we're from there. Vancouver's got a big tech talent and a big community. So that's how we've separated both. The team has grown pretty aggressively over the past 6 weeks. We've hired some top engineers who've built and sold companies before. One person we hired, Isabel, she did a couple summers with NASA. She helped us really deeply on the research side. The team's building up very well and aggressively. And the good thing is, now none of the new hires actually come from the blockchain crypto world. They're just great developers, because our belief is that good developers, talented hard workers can learn this stuff, just like my CTO did and others. The main draw, the good thing now with companies like us is we're working on exciting projects. Hires come along, they see the community that we built up. They can look online and see, people like yourself talking about it, others showing that there's excitement around these products already. For us, that community support has allowed us to attract the talent, and people go, great, they're funded, they've got a vision, we're working on the most cutting breakthrough technology out there, and they've got a nice community support of people talking about it. So that's naturally attractive to talent.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting.
Like I don't think we've ever seen an era like this, where let's just take this was 15 years ago or 10 years ago, and I was building, a social network. Let's say it was Facebook. In early stages, you don't get that community involvement from, somebody like yourself who says, hey, let me interview these guys. They're just starting their company. This sounds cool. I think it'd be innovative. And there's a built-in community in the crypto world where, let's say, like I said, that didn't exist 15 years ago or 10 years ago for any product. It's only now where you can build this community and people start creating buzz and excitement about projects way in advance, which is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. I mean, to take your example of Facebook, at that time when they were just starting, I don't think the people in the community got really excited about having a social network. But this is something that really is fundamentally different in the blockchain world now, that we see in all these decentralized apps and decentralized platforms, that we see, as you said, not just the companies that are creating it, but also their communities that are being built because of the excitement of being part of a whole new way of doing things, basically.
Exactly, that natural ecosystem.
Exactly.
It's ecosystems within ecosystems of stuff that never existed before. Like I said, fellows like yourself and others, I love doing these talks. I love mingling at events because everyone's excited. You never had that before.
No, exactly.
And that's why when mass media or people talk about, crypto pullback or it's a bubble, it's like they don't understand. You've never seen this level of support for technologies, projects, and innovation ever before. Hands down, there's nothing.
No, you're totally right. I think that there's a tendency from the media to talk about the price of, especially just talk about Bitcoin. If you see CNBC, for example, and you all guys know that. But that's the part, as you said, that they don't get, is the excitement of the community. That is something that is like, I call it a silent revolution. That's just the mass media just doesn't understand that part, and that's why they talk about prices.
They're not, I would say is that they're not on the ground talking to people like yourself. They're not going to these small conferences. They're not going to meetups where all that buzz is. So they're not on the ground at all. All they look at is one thing on prices and what bankers say. They don't talk to, like I said, if they want to interview a whole bunch of podcasters and video guys, media like yourselves who are just new into building your own, channels, they could see that, whoa, this is way different than anything else.
Yeah, I think there's a fundamental difference with all what we have seen in the past. Mm-hmm. One thing that I forgot to ask you, Pavel, is that one question that I see often in the different channels and in Telegram as well about Bluzelle is that there is a confusion between Bluzelle and other competitors like storage, for example, Filecoin. Could you please explain how is Bluzelle different than those competitors?
So one is, people forget, right? One is file storage, one is data storage. So then there's fundamental. So then they ask, the next one is, okay, well, what's the difference? I said, let's just say I took a picture on Instagram. Now the picture is a file that might be stored on AWS, right? Now I tag it, Pavel tagged this, with Ryan, we were in Honolulu. That's the data behind the metadata behind it. That'll sit on a database that might be on Oracle. So that's really showing that there's a file and the data. And then the other way even to look at it is like, what's the coin, storage, that's like Dropbox. Bluzelle is like Oracle. So there's data and there's versus storage, file storage.
Yeah. Yeah, I encourage everybody that wants to know more about that to go to your website, that you can see it also on my, I'll leave the link. You have a very good diagram where you show like in the centralized world and now, and then you see basically that you position yourself more as a decentralized version of Oracle.
And then with those companies that you just mentioned is we be complementary to them. So if somebody's building a DApp, hey, I'm going to store my files with storage, and I'm going to use Bluzelle as my database. There, that makes sense too.
Exactly. So it's not one or the other, is complementary.
That's right.
Perfect. Now, just to wrap up, and then to talk about like if there's anything else that you would like to discuss or to tell the community, if there is anything that we can do to help you guys, any news, any new partnerships or anything.
Well, we just put like I said, we just released today the new partnerships that came out with that were use cases building out with Physical, Sentinel, Octus Labs, Quadrant Protocol, all the ones that are heavy into needing databases. They themselves might be data companies. From the community, what we always like is read the article, share it out, tell their friends, join. And the other one, what we're doing now is from community is over the next couple of months, the new website will be up, but even beforehand, what we're doing is when people were before, like, you're doing the ICO, everything's focused around the token. Now going more to product. So if people come to our site, like, if anybody watching this knows somebody who's a blockchain developer, a DApp, or wants to be a producer or a blockchain platform like Zilliqa, Icon, others, they can go to the site, say, hey, this is my role. This is the value proposition I get. Sign up, and then they get early access, and we can get them in the loop early. That's the best thing that can happen from the community is just kind of, I think overall as an ecosystem, educating people why decentralization is key and why companies like Bluzelle are going to make a big difference in terms of data management, data security.
Perfect.
So I guess to sum up, our next 3 months between now and the release of June is just get as many developers and people who want to use a product registered early for it.
Perfect. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all from my side. And as I said at the beginning, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to talking to me, and then indirectly to the rest of the community, to let us know more about this very exciting project, which is Bluzelle.
Well, thanks, Ryan, and thanks for doing all this stuff that you guys, guys like yourself, are doing and getting the word out there and building up the ecosystem.
My pleasure. Thank you, and bye everyone. Guys, if you, I'll leave all the links in the description. And that's it. That was Bluzelle, and see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.